Hello! Welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to be making this wrap dress. Now, in my last wrap dress video, several of you commented that you would like more details in a future video. So, you ask, I deliver. Let me know in the comments if you prefer this type of detailed video or if you prefer my regular video format. Let me know in the comments. And without further ado, let's get to the video. This is the dress I used to create the pattern. I started by tracing the bodice. I laid the dress inside out on my tracing paper and drew a dot at each point of the bodice. Then I began marking the dart adjustments. This dart is a 1-inch fold, 4 inches long. I extended the width of the bodice by 1 inch on each side and lengthened the dart section by 1 inch as well to accommodate the dart. I connected all of my bodice lines. And drew in the dart. I wrote notes on the pattern piece. I followed this same process for all parts of the dress before cutting them out. Here they are. Here is the fabric I'm using. It's 100% cotton, featuring chipmunks, owls, flowers, hedgehogs, and some tree varieties.
You can tell that it's an aspen tree because of the way it is.
I washed and dried my fabric before cutting it out. I had some extra fabric, so I also cut out some pockets. Using the paper pattern, I transferred the darts to the fabric and sewed them in. I attached the front and back bodice pieces along the side and shoulders. The supervisor was inspired by the woodland print and wanted to demonstrate her outdoorsy side. Next was the sleeves. I used a basting stitch to ease the sleeve into the armhole, pinned it in place, and attached them. Then it was time to make the waistband. There are 2 waistband layers made from 3 strips each, matching the seams with the bodice side seams. I sandwiched the bodice between the waistband layers, right sides facing in, and then pinned it down. Speaking of sandwiches, remember that game from the Lilo and Stitch spin-off where Reuben builds sandwiches by catching falling toppings? What a great game. Anyway, I attached my bodice sandwich using a straight stitch and made sure that the seam allowances on the right-hand side were folded outward. I'll come back to this later. For the neckline, I took a shortcut by using a rolled hem. As expected, it created a wavy look that I didn't like. so I seam ripped it out. This is what I get for taking shortcuts. I needed a break, so I checked on the robin's eggs in my front planter. I created bias tape 1 inch long and the length of my neckline. I folded it in half and connected it to the neckline right sides together. I flipped the bias tape to the inside of the dress and top stitched around it twice. It looks much better this way. To finish off the bodice, I added ties to the waistband. Aww. So she's hungry. I laid my skirt and pocket pieces right sides together, then attached them. I laid the skirt back and skirt fronts right sides together and attached those. Next, it was time for the ruffle. I used a basting stitch to create gathers, and pinned it to the bottom of my skirt. I used a rolled hem on the inner seam. To do a rolling hem, you simply roll the edge of the fabric twice and then sew. Take it slow and you'll have a professional finish.
That's pretty neat.
Next, I laid the bodice and skirt right sides together, making sure only to pin the outer waistband layer to the skirt. I matched up the seams and used a small basting stitch to gather the back of the skirt. I used a sneaky little fold on the inner waistband and pinned it down. This completely hides the inner seam. I used the stitch in a ditch method on the outside of the dress to disguise the top stitch. And then used that same folding method to finish off the ties. Remember those waist seams we folded open earlier? I seam ripped those and stitched them into an opening to allow the waist tie to slip through. I used an overlocking stitch to finish off all the raw edges inside, and the dress was done.